Hi everyone, welcome to Vuntech. In today's video, I'll be sharing how to use SharePoint API v2, better known as Graph API via Postman. I'll be demonstrating how to perform CRUD operations on SharePoint lists and how to upload files to a document library. Microsoft Graph API allows you to manipulate almost every single application within the Microsoft 365 suite. This video can be your basis to learning other API calls, such as on AD users, mails, calendars, etc. If you want a SharePoint and Azure portal of your own to follow along this tutorial, watch my first video to find out how you can get a Microsoft subscription for free. The first thing we must do is register our application in portal.azure.com. To do that, you must minimally have an application administrator persona in Azure AD. In the Azure portal, look for app registrations. Click on New Registration. Enter a name. For the tutorial, I'll use Graph API. By default, single tenant will suffice, but if you're planning to use refresh tokens, you need to select multi-tenant. I won't be covering it in this tutorial since I've touched on refresh tokens in my previous video. For our redirect URI, we'll use https www.localhost.com. Select the web platform. Click Register. Once your app is created, remember to save your client ID, then save your tenant ID. For this video, we'll be calling the API without the user, so we'll need a client secret. So we'll go into Certificates and Secrets tab, create a new client secret. I'll use the Graph API name and set my expiry to the Microsoft recommended 6 months. Here, remember to save the secret value because you will not be able to view it again if you navigate away. You'll need to grant the app sufficient permissions for the API calls we are using. It really depends on which API you are calling. For this video, we're performing CRUD operations in SharePoint, so we need the sites.readwrite.all permission. Let's go to API permission in Azure portal. Click Add a permission. Select Microsoft Graph. Here, we choose application permissions since we are calling APIs without the user. Look for permissions, sites.readwrite.all, and add the permission. Next, we need to get the tenant admin or the global administrator persona in Azure AD to grant admin consent. You'll see a green check mark on the status column when it's done. We're done with the Azure setup. Next, we'll go into Postman. We'll be reusing many of these values, and it's worthwhile to collect them as variables in our Postman collection. Copy out our client ID and paste it in Postman. Copy out our tenant ID and paste it in Postman. Copy out our client secret and paste it in Postman. As for our app ID, Microsoft has a list of application IDs on their website. In our case, this is the value for SharePoint Online. You can use the same value. I've placed a link to the documentation in the description box below. Remember to also add your tenant name and your site name. Now we're ready to generate our access token. The access token will be what we use to authenticate our API calls. The default lifespan of the access token is 60 to 90 minutes, which is 75 minutes on average. We'll use a post method in Postman to generate our access token. The API to call is login.microsoftonline.com/tenantid/oauth2/v2.0/token. We'll need one header, content type with value application/x www form URL encoded. For our body, we'll need 4 parameters. Grant type, client_credentials. Client ID, we'll use our variable client ID. Client secret, we'll use our variable client secret. For scope, we'll use https graph.microsoft.com/.default. Send our API call. In the response, copy out our bearer token and save it as our collection variable. We know our site name, but now we need to get our site ID. In step 4, we'll use a get method with authorization bearer token. Use a Microsoft Graph API call with /sites/tenantname.sharepoint.com:/sites/sitename. For headers, we only need the authorization with value bearer space our access token variable. You'll realize Microsoft Graph APIs have minimal parameters and are intuitive to use, which make them great. Send our API call, and in the response, we see the ID value. We see our SharePoint site followed by two strings, separated by a comma. We just need to grab the first string, which is our site ID, and save it as a collection variable. We'll need the list name that we are intending to use, and we'll need the list ID for our API call. In step 5, we'll use a get method with authorization bearer token. Use the Microsoft Graph API call with /sites/siteid/lists. Of course, you can use the search parameters if you have many lists in your site, using the $search equals your search string. For headers, we need authorization with value bearer space our access token variable. Send our API call, and in the response, we just need to locate the list that we are working with. The list I'm using is a work progress tracker, which is available as a template in SharePoint, and grab the list ID. Copy out the list ID and save it as a collection variable. We're ready to start with our CRUD operations. First, C, creating a list item. We'll use a post method with authorization bearer token. Use the Microsoft Graph API call with /sites/siteid/lists/listid/items. For headers, authorization with value bearer space our access token variable, and content type with value application/JSON. In our body, we'll use the following format: curly brackets with double quotes fields, colon, curly brackets, followed by your field name and field value. In my example, I'll just be creating a list item with the field title and value new item. Hit send, and you get a 201 created. In the response, we see our new item created with ID 2. Let's navigate to the SharePoint. Hit refresh and you can see new item has been created. Next, R, reading list items. We'll use a get method with authorization bearer token. Use the Microsoft Graph API call with /sites/siteid/listid/items/your item ID. For headers, authorization with value bearer space our access token. Hit send, you get a 200 OK. You can see the new item that we previously created and all the data related to it in the response. Next, U, updating a list item. We'll use a patch method with authorization bearer token. Use the Microsoft Graph API call with /sites/siteid/listid/items/item ID. Be sure to reference your item ID to accurately patch the item. For headers, authorization with value bearer space our access token variable, and content type with value application/JSON. For the body, it's the same format as when you create a list item. For those fields which you omit, they will not be updated. In my example, I'll just be updating the list item which I've created with the field, title and value, updated item. Hit send and you get a 200 OK. In the response, we see our item ID 2 with field title has the value updated item. Let's navigate to the SharePoint. Hit refresh and you can see that our item has been updated from new item to updated item. Next, D, deleting a list item. We'll use a delete method with authorization bearer token. Use the Microsoft Graph API call with /sites/siteid/list/listid/items/your item ID. For headers, authorization with value bearer space our access token variable. Hit send and you get a 204 no content. Let's navigate to the SharePoint. Hit refresh and you can see that our updated item has been successfully deleted. In step 6, we'll use a get method with authorization bearer token in order to get a drive ID. A drive ID is basically the ID of your folder path, be it in SharePoint or OneDrive. Use the Microsoft Graph API call with /sites/siteid/drives. For headers, authorization with value bearer space our access token variable. Send our API call, and in the response, we just need to locate the drive that we are working with. In this case, I'm working with the Shared Documents document library that comes automatically with SharePoint sites. I'll locate the drive ID, copy it out, and save it as my collection variable. In this tutorial, I'll be showing you how to read and upload files to SharePoint. We'll use a get method with authorization bearer token to read our drive items. Use a Microsoft Graph API call with /drives/driveid/root:/your folder directory:/children. For headers, authorization with value bearer space our access token variable. In my case, I have a folder called Graph API in the shared documents folder. Send our API call, and in the response, the list of items in the drive will be listed. We see there is a file called graphpic.png file in the folder. We can head over to our SharePoint document library to validate this. We'll use a put method with authorization bearer token to upload a file to our SharePoint document library. Use the Microsoft Graph API call with /drives/driveid/root:/folder directory/your filename.fileextension:/children. Do note that the file name that you have here is the file name that you wish to see in the drive. That is, it doesn't have to be the same as the actual file name. However, the file extension should be the same. For headers, authorization with value bearer space our access token variable. In my case, I'm going to upload my face.png file in the body as a binary. Send our API call. We'll head over to SharePoint. We can see that our file has been successfully uploaded. Hope you've enjoyed this video. Do give me a thumbs up if you did. Please subscribe to my channel as it helps me a ton. If you have any questions, do leave them in the comment section and I'll help answer them. See you and take care.